I had always believed in the sanctity of our marriage. My name is John Matthews, a 38-year-old engineer with a stable job, a modest home in suburban Ohio, and a heart that trusted unreservedly. For years, my wife, Sarah, and I shared our lives with the certainty that our love was unbreakable. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the day I stumbled upon a digital betrayal, a photo of Sarah on a dating site, Tinder, that shattered everything I thought I knew. It was a chilly November evening. I had returned home earlier than usual from work, eager to relax and maybe catch a movie with Sarah. The living room was dimly lit, and the silence was unsettling. I set my briefcase on the table and moved toward the kitchen to fix myself a cup of coffee. As I passed by Sarah's study, a room she rarely used, I noticed her phone lying on the coffee table, unlocked and still active. My curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up and saw the Tinder app open, its home screen displaying several profiles. One image caught my attention. It was a clear, vibrant photo of Sarah laughing, posted in an entirely different context. The background wasn't our cozy living room. It was a chic, urban setting. The caption read something like, "Enjoying life, new adventures." A chill ran down my spine as I scrolled through her profile, reading messages and seeing photos that portrayed her as someone I didn't recognize. A woman who craved attention, excitement, and perhaps someone else's affection. Questions swarmed my mind. When had Sarah started using Tinder? Who was she talking to? Was I just a convenient partner? Or did she have an entirely different life outside our marriage? The shock was overwhelming. I felt betrayed not only by the content on the screen but also by the realization that I had been living a lie that masked her true self. Every memory of our shared moments began to warp under the weight of suspicion. That photograph was a piece of evidence that I couldn't ignore. I put down the phone slowly, feeling as if I had just touched something forbidden. The room around me seemed to close in, each ticking second amplifying my inner turmoil. I could almost hear the echo of my heart pounding in my ears. The rational part of me argued to confront Sarah immediately, but another part, the part that sought clarity before anger, urged me to keep quiet for now. I needed answers, and the only way to get them was to dig deeper into this secret digital realm that my wife had concealed. The following days turned into a haze of suspicion and despair. I found myself fixated on her phone when she wasn't around, trying to piece together the timeline of her secret communications. I discovered messages filled with flirtations, playful banter, and even plans to meet someone she called Mike. Each message was a dagger, twisting further into my already fragile heart. I couldn't reconcile the Sarah I knew with this new, elusive version of her. The internal battle was excruciating. I recalled the early days of our marriage when we promised to be honest and faithful, believing that love was enough to withstand any storm. Now that promise seemed like a cruel joke. My mind was filled with doubts about our shared past, our intimate conversations, and every moment of unguarded trust. I questioned every memory. Did she really laugh with me at our favorite jokes? Or were those moments just another act in her double life? I began to isolate myself, retreating into long, sleepless nights filled with silent conversations with my own doubts. Work became a blur, and even my favorite hobbies lost their luster. I was a man haunted by betrayal, a man whose world had suddenly become a labyrinth of secrets. The once comforting routines of daily life now felt oppressive, a constant reminder that everything I knew was built on shaky ground and in the solitude of my thoughts. I tried to understand how I could have been so blind. The warning signs were there. Small moments when Sarah's laughter sounded a little too forced, when her eyes darted away during conversations about our future, when she clutched her phone as if it were a lifeline. But I had chosen to ignore them, trusting in our love and in her commitment to me. By the end of that week, I realized that I had reached a critical juncture. I was no longer the passive husband who could turn a blind eye to growing discrepancies. I needed to confront the painful truth head-on. I prepared myself for a conversation that I dreaded more than anything else. A confrontation with Sarah about her secret life on Tinder. The fear of the unknown battled with the need for closure. I wanted to know whether there was a chance for redemption, or if this betrayal was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. The irony was not lost on me. In my pursuit of truth, I had inadvertently stepped into the role of an investigator in my own love story, trying to decipher a puzzle that had shattered my belief in our shared future. With each piece of evidence I uncovered, my heart grew heavier, and the painful realization set in that nothing would ever be the same again. As I closed my eyes that night, the image of Sarah's smiling face on Tinder haunted me, a stark reminder of the secrets that lay hidden in the digital world and the fragile trust that had once bound us together. I was left with one inescapable question. How do you rebuild a life when the foundation has crumbled beneath your feet? The days following my discovery were a blur of conflicted emotions. I oscillated between disbelief, rage, and a numbing sadness that left me questioning everything I once held dear. I tried to live a normal life, going to work, interacting with friends, and even meeting for drinks with old buddies like Tom and Rick, but the secret gnawed at me constantly. Every casual conversation became a reminder of the life I thought I knew, a life that was now tarnished by betrayal. I started keeping a journal, a desperate attempt to organize the chaos in my mind. In scribbled notes, I recounted every detail, every conversation, every memory that now seemed laced with deceit. It wasn't just about Sarah's infidelity. It was about the realization that I had been blind to the signs, that I had trusted too easily. I wrote about the nights I spent awake, replaying our moments together, trying to identify the instances when something had gone awry. One sleepless evening, as I sat at my desk with a cup of coffee growing cold, I recalled an instance when Sarah had been uncharacteristically vague about her whereabouts. "I'm just meeting a friend," she had said, dismissing my concerns with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. At the time, I had brushed it off as a minor quirk, a harmless moment of spontaneity. But now, in the harsh light of betrayal, every casual lie, every little omission, became a glaring red flag. My mind was a battlefield of thoughts. Anger and disappointment waged war against my lingering hope that perhaps there was an explanation. I began to analyze every detail, every word she had spoken over the years. Had I really missed all those signs? Or was I simply unwilling to accept the truth? The internal conflict was paralyzing, leaving me feeling isolated in a marriage that was slowly disintegrating into silence and secrets. I started questioning my own worth. Was I not enough for her? Did my dedication and love not measure up to the excitement that someone else could provide? The comparison was unavoidable. I found myself wondering if I had become complacent, if my routine life had somehow pushed her into the arms of another. Mike, as he was known in those furtive Tinder chats. The notion that Sarah could find solace or excitement in the company of a stranger was both humiliating and painful. Late one night, after a particularly exhausting day at work, I decided to confront my own feelings directly. I took a long walk around the block, the cool air offering a temporary escape from the suffocating memories. As I walked, I allowed the silence to fill my mind, each step a reminder of how far I had fallen into despair. I tried to recall the early days of our relationship, when every moment felt like a promise of forever. Those days now seemed like distant echoes, drowned out by the harsh reality of betrayal. I remember sitting on a park bench and watching the world go by, couples laughing together, families strolling hand in hand. Each scene was a painful juxtaposition to my inner turmoil. I couldn't help but feel that I was the only one living in a nightmare, trapped in a world where love had become a commodity exchanged for fleeting thrills. The loneliness was overwhelming, and as I sat there, I questioned not only Sarah's actions but my own identity as a husband, a partner, and a man. I turned to self-reflection, wondering if there was any part of me that had contributed to this tragedy. Was I too predictable, too set in my ways? Had I become a comfort zone rather than an adventure? These questions were like acid on my soul, eroding the remnants of my self-confidence. In the midst of my self-doubt, I began to see my marriage as a series of moments I had taken for granted, each one now laden with the weight of lost trust. The more I dwelled on the betrayal, the more I felt a desperate need for validation. Proof that I was not just a victim of circumstances, but a man who deserved the truth. I started researching online about infidelity, reading stories of other husbands who had gone through similar heartbreak. Their words resonated with me, but instead of offering solace, they only deepened my understanding of the magnitude of Sarah's betrayal. I felt isolated, Alone in a maze of secrets and lies. One evening, while browsing through an online forum, I came across a discussion about digital evidence and trust in the age of technology. It made me wonder how many of us were unknowingly living double lives, hiding behind screens and algorithms. The digital age, which promised connection and understanding, had ironically become the stage for deception and heartbreak. I was left to grapple with the realization that the modern world had added layers of complexity to the very concept of fidelity. As I wrestled with these thoughts, I knew that I was reaching a tipping point. The internal descent into despair was no longer a private affair. It was seeping into every facet of my existence. I began to lose interest in things that once brought me joy. My work performance faltered, and even the comforting presence of friends and family couldn't pull me out of the emotional mire. I was drowning in a sea of regrets, anger, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. I in that quiet solitude, with nothing left but the stark truth staring back at me from the screen. I realized that I had two choices. I could let this betrayal define me and break me, or I could find the strength to confront it head-on. The man I used to be, the man who had believed in love and trust, was fading away, replaced by someone hardened by pain and disillusionment. The decision was not an easy one. I was torn between the urge to exact revenge and the need to seek understanding, to reclaim my dignity in a situation that felt utterly chaotic. That night, as I closed my journal and stared into the dark abyss of my room, I knew that the coming days would demand a confrontation. Not just with Sarah, but with the part of me that still longed for the love we once shared. I was at a crossroads, and the path forward was uncertain, shrouded in doubt and the bitter taste of betrayal. Yet, somewhere in the depths of my despair, I sensed that this journey, painful as it was, might eventually lead me to a truth I could live with. A truth that would either mend the broken pieces of my life or force me to build something entirely new from the ashes of what once was. The day had come when I could no longer bear the weight of silence. I knew that the truth had to be confronted. After days of restless nights and endless introspection, I decided that I needed to face Sarah directly. I planned for a quiet Sunday morning when we'd both be at home, away from any distractions, and with enough time to talk. Really talk. About everything that had been festering beneath the surface. I woke up earlier than usual, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and determination. In the kitchen, as I made coffee, I rehearsed the conversation in my mind, trying to find the right words to express the depth of my hurt without descending into a torrent of uncontrolled anger. I wasn't sure if Sarah would even understand the gravity of my pain, but I had to try. When Sarah finally emerged from the bedroom, she looked tired but unsuspecting, as if she had no idea that our morning would soon be marred by the specter of betrayal. "Good morning, John," she said softly, her voice a mixture of affection and the usual morning grogginess. I nodded, my eyes betraying nothing of the turmoil inside. I invited her to sit at the table, and as we both sipped our coffee, the silence between us grew heavy. After a few moments, I cleared my throat. "Sarah, there's something I need to talk to you about," I began, my voice steady but low. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine with a flicker of concern. "What's wrong?" she asked, though I could already sense that something was off. I hesitated for a moment, searching for the words that could convey my pain without sounding accusatory. "I found something on your phone," I said finally, watching as her expression shifted subtly. "I saw a Tinder profile with your picture. I read your messages. I know about Mike." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's eyes widened, and her hand trembled as she reached for her cup, nearly spilling its contents. "John," she began, but I raised my hand to stop her. I couldn't let her interject. Not yet. I had to let my feelings come out in full, raw form. "I trusted you, Sarah," I continued, my voice rising in a mixture of sorrow and anger. "I trusted you with everything I had, and now I feel like a fool. I don't understand how you could do this. Who is Mike? What did I do to make you seek something else?" Her silence was answer enough for a while, but finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "John, it's not that I don't love you. I felt something was missing, something I couldn't find here. I never meant to hurt you." Her words, intended to soothe, instead ignited a storm within me. Missing? What did you need that you couldn't find here? We built a life together, Sarah. We promised to face everything together. How could you turn to someone else? Someone you met on Tinder, to fill that void? I demanded, each word laced with a pain that had been building for weeks. Sarah's eyes welled up with tears, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I had once known. The woman who laughed at my jokes and planned our future with a sparkle in her eyes. But that image was quickly overtaken by the present, a reality I wasn't sure I could ever accept. I felt alone, John, she whispered. I didn't feel heard. I felt invisible sometimes. And then I met Mike, and he made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. The mention of his name was like a blow. My mind raced with images of this stranger. Someone who had managed to make her feel seen and desired. Alive? And what about us? Our life together? Was I just not enough? I asked, bitterness creeping into every syllable. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to explain. It wasn't about you not being enough. I was struggling with my own feelings, my own insecurities. I know I should have talked to you, but I was scared. I was confused and lost. Her voice cracked, laden with regret. But it did little to ease the storm raging inside me. I leaned back, feeling as though my heart was being pulled in a million directions. Every accusation, every denial, every tear that fell between us was a reminder of the years we had spent together, now tarnished by the bitter taste of betrayal. I need to know everything, Sarah, I said, my voice hollow. I need to understand when this started, what it means, and whether there's any way for us to move past this. The conversation stretched on for what felt like hours. Sarah told me about her growing sense of isolation, the ways in which she felt unheard even as I busied myself with work and the mundane routines of daily life. She admitted that her interactions with Mike had started innocently enough, with a few casual messages on Tinder that escalated into something more. But as she spoke, I realized that while her story might explain her actions, it didn't excuse the betrayal. My heart ached with the knowledge that I had been living in a false sense of security, that I had missed the signs of her inner turmoil, that I remember feeling an overwhelming mixture of emotions. Anger, sadness, disbelief, all swirling together in a vortex of heartbreak. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again, if the woman I had married could be the same person I once knew. Yet, even in the midst of my anger, I could see the raw vulnerability in her eyes, a silent plea for understanding and forgiveness. By the time our conversation finally drew to a close, the damage had been done. Our once warm, comforting home felt colder and more distant. I was left questioning the future of our marriage, wondering if the love we had built over the years could survive such a breach of trust. I walked away from that conversation feeling hollow, each step heavier than the last. Knowing that the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with pain, I spent that night in restless torment, replaying every word, every gesture, and every tear. I wondered if there was any chance for redemption, or if this betrayal was a wound too deep to ever truly heal. The confrontation had shattered the illusion of our perfect life, leaving me with nothing but raw, unfiltered truth, and a question that would haunt me in the days to come. Could love be rebuilt on a foundation of lies? In the weeks that followed the confrontation, our home became a silent battleground. The space that once resonated with shared laughter and whispered dreams was now filled with echoes of pain and regret. I found myself drifting through days in a state of numb disbelief, trying to grasp the magnitude of what had been lost. Every corner of our house held memories of a happier time, yet they now seemed to mock me with reminders of Sarah's betrayal. I started spending more time alone. I'd sit in the dark of our living room, flipping through old photo albums, each picture a bittersweet testament to the life we had built together. The joy of those moments was now overshadowed by the knowledge that behind every smile and every shared moment, a hidden truth had been lying in wait. The images of Sarah in happier times conflicted violently with the recent revelation, leaving me torn between nostalgia and despair. Work became a refuge of sorts, a place where I could lose myself in numbers, blueprints, and projects. Yet, even in the midst of routine tasks, my mind wandered to the questions that plagued me. How could I have been so blind? Was there any part of me that could have prevented this? Every meeting, every conversation, felt like a reminder of my failure. Not just as a husband, but as a partner in our shared life. I began to attend therapy, seeking solace in the words of professionals who had seen countless hearts shattered by betrayal. In those sessions, I was forced to confront the raw edges of my emotions, to acknowledge that the man I once was now a mosaic of broken trust and wounded pride. The therapist asked questions that cut deeper than I was comfortable with. What do you think led to this? Were there moments when you felt disconnected? I had to face the possibility that our communication had faltered long before Sarah found solace in the arms of another man. But therapy was a double-edged sword. While it gave me the tools to understand my own feelings, it also forced me to confront the painful reality that healing would be a long, uncertain journey. I started writing letters that I never intended to send, pouring my heart out onto paper in a desperate attempt to reclaim some semblance of control over my life. I wrote about the moments when I felt abandoned, the silent nights when I lay awake wondering where things had gone wrong, and the bitter taste of betrayal that lingered long after the truth had been revealed. In the quiet solitude of those days, I also turned to the support of my closest friends. Tom and Rick became my sounding boards, listening patiently as I recounted the details of my discovery and the ensuing confrontation. Their words of comfort, though well-meaning, only served to underscore the magnitude of my loss. I felt adrift, caught between the desire to salvage what was left of my marriage and the need to rebuild my shattered sense of self at home. Sarah and I tried to navigate the fragile landscape of our broken relationship. There were days when we would sit together at the dinner table in a strained silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. Occasionally, a spark of the old love would emerge, a tender look, a hesitant attempt at conversation, but it was quickly extinguished by the weight of unresolved pain. The intimacy we once took for granted was replaced by a cautious politeness, each of us wary of triggering further hurt. One particularly cold evening, as I was organizing some old documents in our study, I stumbled upon a letter Sarah had written during a time when things between us had been smoother, filled with dreams of a future together. I read it over and over, trying to find answers in the faded ink. Was there a time when we truly understood each other? Or was I simply clinging to a memory that no longer existed? The letter was a poignant reminder of a love that had once been vibrant and full of promise, now reduced to a relic of the past. Yet, in the midst of this inner turmoil, there were moments of unexpected clarity. I began to realize that while the betrayal was a wound inflicted by someone I loved, it also forced me to confront my own shortcomings. Perhaps I had become complacent, assuming that our marriage was impervious to the small cracks that, over time, had grown into chasms. I recognized that in our shared silence, we had both failed to communicate our needs and fears. This acknowledgement did not excuse Sarah's actions, but it did offer a glimmer of understanding, a small piece of the puzzle that might help me make sense of the chaos. I started to explore my own interests again, rediscovering passions that had been buried under years of routine and responsibility. I took up running, each mile a physical manifestation of the effort I needed to rebuild myself from the inside out. I reconnected with old hobbies, the simple pleasures that had once defined me as an individual. Slowly, I began to see that my identity was not solely tied to being Sarah's husband. I was John Matthews, a man with dreams, vulnerabilities, and a capacity for healing. But every step forward was tempered by the persistent ache of loss. I would see Sarah in quiet moments, her eyes distant as she stared out the window or her hands trembling as she attempted to cook dinner, and I would be reminded of the betrayal that had altered our course forever. I longed to bridge the gap between us, to find a way back to the intimacy we had lost. But the path to reconciliation was strewn with obstacles too vast to ignore. As the months passed, I came to a difficult realization. Healing was not a linear process, nor was it something that could be rushed. There were days when the pain would subside, replaced by a cautious hope that perhaps we could find our way back to each other. And then there were days when every memory, every whispered word of the past, would bring the sting of betrayal all over again. I learned to live with the uncertainty, to accept that the future was a tapestry woven from both joy and sorrow. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, I started to see the beauty in the struggle. The betrayal had forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities, to acknowledge the imperfections that made us human. While Sarah's actions had inflicted a wound that might never fully heal, they also served as a catalyst for my own growth. A painful, yet necessary, journey towards self-discovery. I began to wonder if forgiveness was possible. Not just for Sarah, but for myself. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about forgetting the betrayal or pretending that it never happened. It was about accepting the painful truth, learning from it, and allowing it to shape a stronger, wiser version of myself. In those quiet moments of introspection, I clung to the hope that one day, the scars of betrayal might fade into something that resembled peace. As I write this now, I'm still unsure of what the future holds. The road ahead is uncertain, marked by moments of both darkness and light. But one thing is clear: the journey has changed me irrevocably. I have learned that love, in all its complexity, is as fragile as it is resilient. And while the betrayal will always be a part of our story, it no longer defines the entirety of my existence. I am still John Matthews, a man who has loved, lost, and is slowly learning how to love again. Today, as I sit at my kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee, I reflect on the long, painful road that has brought me to this moment. The past months have been a blur of heartache, self-discovery, and tentative steps toward rebuilding a life that feels both familiar and strangely new. Sarah and I are still together, but our relationship now exists in a delicate balance. A dance between the memories of what we once were and the uncertain promise of what we might become. The process of renewal has not been easy. There have been days when the pain of betrayal resurfaced without warning. A song on the radio, a familiar scent, a glance exchanged in a quiet room. But with each challenge, I've learned a little more about forgiveness, resilience, and the importance of reclaiming my own identity. I have discovered that healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about integrating it into a narrative that acknowledges both the beauty and the scars of life. Sarah, too, has been on her own journey of redemption. Our once-forgotten conversations are now replaced by difficult, honest dialogues about our needs, our shortcomings, and our hopes for the future. We attend therapy together, slowly peeling back the layers of resentment and hurt, striving to understand not only the mistakes we made, but the underlying wounds that led us there. There is no magic fix, no sudden epiphany that erases the pain. But in our shared commitment to rebuild trust, we have found moments of genuine connection, glimpses of the love that once bound us, now tempered by the wisdom of hard-earned experience. I have also come to realize that renewal is as much about self-love as it is about forgiveness. In reclaiming my own passions, running at dawn, rediscovering old hobbies, spending quiet evenings lost in thought, I have started to piece together the fragments of the man I once was. I am learning to appreciate the solitude that comes with introspection and to celebrate the small victories that mark each day's progress. Slowly, I am understanding that my worth is not defined by someone else's betrayal, but by my own ability to rise above it. Today, when I look at Sarah, I see both the woman I fell in love with and the person who made mistakes. Someone who, like me, is trying to navigate the messy, unpredictable landscape of human emotions. There are still moments of silence that speak louder than words, moments when the past lingers in the corners of our shared space. But there are also moments of laughter, tenderness, and a mutual determination to create something new from the ruins of our old life. I am sharing this story. I want you to know that betrayal does not mark the end of love. It may shatter illusions and force us to confront our deepest vulnerabilities, but it also offers an opportunity for rebirth, a chance to build a foundation that is more honest, more resilient, and ultimately more real. I have learned that forgiveness is not a concession to the past, but a declaration that I refuse to be defined by it. I am choosing to move forward, even if the road ahead is uncertain and filled with obstacles. So here I am, a man scarred by betrayal yet not defeated. A man who has come to understand that the process of healing is not linear, but a journey marked by both setbacks and breakthroughs. As I finish this cup of coffee and prepare for another day, I am filled with a cautious hope. I do not know what tomorrow will bring, but I do know that I am stronger than I ever imagined, and that every painful lesson has carved the path to a renewed self. A self capable of love, trust, and ultimately, forgiveness. This is not the end of my story, but rather a new beginning. The scars will remain, a testament to the battles fought and the lessons learned. And while the road to renewal may be long and fraught with uncertainty, I am ready to walk it. One step, one breath, one honest moment at a time. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this journey, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories like this one. Got thoughts or experiences you'd like to share? Drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.